Hello.
And we'd like to start asking you just a simple question what is your job?
Well, I'm an architect, but I work in association with other professionals and in situations that are quite complex in which the knowledge coming from architecture gets challenged in the interaction with other people and with other things, conditions, knowledge, things.
So, is it a job for you or is it just something you do for living? It's your passion?
I think it's all of those things, and it changes. In some moments it's a passion, in some moments it's a nightmare or pain. But in a way it's an occupation, and I could say it's a way of being in society. That's my main thing.
And where do you work? Is it a physical space, virtual space?
Well, I work, like, I think most of us in a place which is at the same time online and offline. And I'm working also in a series of places that not necessarily are totally connected. But I have my office in Madrid and I develop projects where I find opportunities to do it.
A question about your project, the things you do, like how do you start the project? If you have how you finish it?
The projects, as I understand them, do not have a beginning and do not have an ending. So I try to somehow identify the situations in which I work as something that has been running for a long time when I arrive. And the first part of my job is to identify what are the processes that are already going on there, and then to see how I could intervene to check if some possibilities are available or not. And when I leave them, they go on working, evolving, transforming in something totally different most of the times of what I thought it would be in the future. So there's no ending, there's no beginning, and I'm kind of in a situation in which prediction is always a problematic thing.
So when you do a project, you don't create something completely new.
Exactly.
You just work on something else.
If I came to do something in this situation, in this field, in this institution, I could not transform everything and erase everything. I could try just to do a strategical transformation so the capital, the social capital that is here could remain. But that means, of course, that I have to identify the processes that are here, the hierarchies, the existence that are valuable, the culture that is here, and somehow try to do an intervention that is preserving those things, those that are valuable, and challenging those that somehow are becoming a problem in a situation like this. And at the same time, when I left, if I left a place like this after a transformation, I'm sure it would evolve into something that in a way would not fulfill the program that I left here. So again, it will become an opportunity for all the complexity that is here to emerge in a way that is unpredictable for me. But it's somehow reacting and it's happening because some of the things that I did were actually placed here.
Can you call these things that you prevent, that you intervene, which is like the tradition of the place? Is that for you the tradition? What is tradition?
I would call them not the tradition, but the traditions. It's very important, this shift, because and I think it's very clever to call it the tradition because it connects it with a whole corpus of research and thought on these things. But it's very important for me, this little shift. There's never a single tradition. There are many traditions overlap and dispute in in any place. So here there's a tradition of the open source, you were telling me, but it's mixed with the tradition of the, let's say, rediscover and reuse furniture, and it's mixed and in confrontation with the tradition of the building itself and the institution of Mendrisio. Probably there are some controversies going on here that I don't know, but that are challenging the institution as it is. And altogether aesthetical ones, for instance, this reuse of materials probably challenging some of the ways of thinking that are happening in this institution, in this academia. So the mixture and the overlapping and the discussion between all these traditions is the, let's say, the in-betweens in which I like to work.
Okay. And if I can ask you, do you use references in your projects? Or how do you interpret it?
What do you mean by references?
Yeah, references maybe for me is, for example, an image, something that always comes in your mind when you start to work. Maybe that comes also from the tradition, the place that you started to interview.
Yeah.
So, or is something that you studied before, something that creates an different in you. Be an image,
Yeah,
could be everything.
this is a very interesting question. I would say that it's very important to know that the architect is not the only one moving references into a design process. So actually the architect is managing the references of a whole community, and those references in many occasions are somehow struggling between them or fighting against them. This is very interesting for me because you get to see that in a very particular situation there's a confrontation of references, and there's a need to work out quite well the language, and not only the spoken language but the architectural language, to make this confrontation somehow part of the project. I will give you some examples. We designed a house that we call the Teddy House. In the Teddy House, we as architects could identify the number of connections between the existence and the program that the family wanted for that house. But many others were not provided by us, but by the family itself. Some of them they were not even totally aware that they had those references. And some of them were performed. For instance, they had been using that space before we started to construct it for a long time as a holidays place. And they had done so many games there. Like they even had an Olympic Games, familiar Olympic Games going on there. So all those games were moving references. So they said, oh, this is the place where we run like Carl Lewis used to run. You know, that was a very particular reference, not ours. But we had a different one. We were thinking, oh, we would like it to be like an Alvaro Siza garden. And then we had to confront the Alvaro Siza garden with the Carl Lewis, the place like where Carl Lewis was running, and you know. So we had to confront them in the friction between these references. There's an opportunity for architecture to become kind of a parliament in a way that parallel reference worlds, parallel interests could remain somehow existing without having to once erase the others. That's where I'm interested.
But let's say you start a project, maybe your references, for example, really architectonical also references, like Alvaro Siza garden.
Yeah. But then in the conversation,
then you see also.
Yeah. What is interesting for me is not to see the references as fixed things, but as some tools that we use in the discussion and in the conversation with other actors like clients, affected, nature, animals, next generations, you know. So what is interesting for me is to move the attention from the references themselves and to the role they play when they come to the negotiation. I will give you an example. Probably something that has happened to you. Imagine when I don't know, a father says to a teenager son, "You should pay more attention to Bach," and to Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, the musician. Yeah. And the teenager says, "Yeah, I really like Bach, but I like better, I don't know, Radiohead, or I don't know, Blondie, And maybe the teenager really likes Bach, but he says, "Yeah, my father always with these awful things, I'm going to provoke him, and I'm going to say, Blondie, I like better Blondie, or I like better, I don't know, what? Yeah, Lady Gaga. I like better Lady Gaga." And the father, "Well, Lady Gaga, that's shit." This kind of confrontation, in my opinion, is more interesting, because then we see that references are part of a dialogue. It's kind of a performance in which societies get shaped. That's the importance of references for me, and that's why it's very important for me to see them like process, in which references are fighting ones to others, and they are in the struggle, in the confrontation. They are constructing a whole environment, a whole context that somehow is more dynamic. Yeah.
You have to say, because I remember when you have to say this like an analog key to you have always a lot of images.
Yeah, definitely. And actually we work with clients saying, "Okay, what are your images? These are ours." And exchanging them, like, when you're doing your album, I don't know what stage is for this, when kids collect with the football players, the stickers, and they have to put them, it's kind of like that. But for me, the interesting thing is to see things as a process in which the interesting thing is the interaction. No things fix things in themselves. So it's an ecological vision of the design, in which interaction is much more important than, let's say, essence or something like that. Yes.
Do you consider your first work? I keep on doing these are perfect.
Yeah, perfect. That's perfect.
Do you consider your first work as a reference?
Yeah.
Afterwards?
Yeah. Though I changed the interpretation of the own works. So I see them now in a different way, in the way that I thought of them when they happened. For instance, one big topic for me to think about is the Technogeisa. It's one of the first works I did, and it's the construction of a character, a host, like a housekeeper.
Maybe you can explain.
Yeah, the Technogeisa is one of the first projects. It's the construction of a character that was a lady that was somehow mediating in between different people, so they could construct a situation. And she had some clothes that she could transform to produce, let's say, automatic, I said, instant architectures that were adjusting to the needs of the very situation at that very moment. For instance, she had like a code that was like a central park, so she had grass in it, but she could also switch on like a thing like that, and she could have a kitchen within the code. And then if she had some need for intimacy, she could blow like a 10, and the whole clothes would become like a 10, and she could invite people to come into her intimacy capsule. So she could transform the whole environment by activating her clothes. For me, this work is very interesting, still now. It's very, very important for me to remember that architecture could be thought of architectural devices, like mediators. So we have a whole tradition of housekeeping that could be very useful for architecture. In the way, for instance, host is always taking care of different guests. Like, okay, you could have guests with very different ideas. The Lady Gaga fan with the Johann Sebastian Bach fan. The host would mediate. Okay, but I really see that Lady Gaga could be interesting and fun. No, yeah, well, these kind of mediations for me are very important. And you can do that with architecture. So in a way, I always keep thinking of the things that I've done before, because they provide me an experience that could somehow be different from that you get from drawings or models or, let's say, isolated reflections.
But now we are talking about a problem with this work of Torrento,
the nomadic woman. Yeah, it's very related. Yeah, definitely. Though, the nomadic girl from Tokyo, I think it's a very important work. And many things, the parangoles, for instance. The parangoles, you know, Lydia Park, all these clothes that many people have to use at the same time. Or for instance, many of the things that have happened with Museum Chalayan's designs. And there's a whole tradition of thinking of the construction of characters as urbanistas that for me has been very important. And I want my architecture to be related to that. And not only that, let's say high cultural examples, but also very basic things like, for instance, the picnics, the baskets for picnics, or the now that there's this wonderful exhibition of Louis Vuitton in Paris, all these cases that made you bring your home wherever you were traveling. There's one, all those, that's an important tradition I would like to connect with. So you're right,
Yes, do you have a master? Nice.
Yeah, many. So many, I think. I mean, I have a context of mastery, I would say, of excellency, to which I try to connect. But many. For me, the whole tradition of interface design has been very important. And the big masters there. For instance, the whole tradition of gardening is been very important in the way that you have to like movements from people. And people themselves. And I could tell you many names, many unknown, and others better known, but it would be kind of unfair not to say all of them. But there are many, and even movies. For me, it's been very important. Things like Pedro Almodóvar, in the way he depictures daily life and domestic life. For me, it's been also very important the tradition of Casabets movies, in which show spaces are like, for instance, the killing of a Chinese bookie. Do you know this movie by the John Cassavetes? Yeah, the filmmaker. It's the story of a guy that runs an striptease place, and he's kind of creating a family with the strippers and himself and other people, and that is challenged by a very unfair thing that happens, and by this situation the whole structures there get very clear and very easy to spot and to read, and this kind of opportunity to find complex relationships in places that we tend not to see, it's been very important for me, and that's why I'm so interested in finding references in traditions.
References.
Yeah.
References in this masters.
Yeah.
Some of the really
a name or something.
A maestro in a figure, for example, someone who really teach you architecture or teach you some.
Newer names, like people that is being very important.
No, maybe it's not so
for
important.
Instance, many people. For instance,
there is no many people.
No, but I'll tell you some. For instance, Juan Navarro Valdebeg was very important for me in the way he was considering objects like sections of whole relationships. For instance, Federico Soriano was at a very particular moment very important for me. Also Andrés Perea was very close to me. Those are like local masters. There are others, Toyo Ito you mentioned, in the way he was reading visibility as something that was not directly connected with material constitution. For instance, Bruno Latour, in the way that he's explaining how how societies are material constructions and based on disputes. For instance, Michel Serres, in the way that he's connecting virtual worlds with the material ones. For instance, I think in our generation it was very important, Frank Colas, of course, and many of the works that he's developed, and many others. So I think there could be a whole constellation of masters that have been somehow opportunities for me to confront my ideas to those and experience to those of others.
It's nice to see this because it's like your culture is really open to everything.
Yep.
Like your culture is around you and you just pick things from the things you're surrounded. Like, because we have an interview with some just from master, so like more radical.
Yes. I could tell many other things, for instance. The tradition of housekeeping is been very important for me. So things that I've seen in my grandmother or my mother or in other people, it's been very important. The way the tables are set, how hierarchies, times are constructed by these things, or the way people get together by taking care of plants. Watering them, discussing whether they should have more water or less, the way, other things that have been a reference for me are shared homes. I've done a lot of research on that. And the way, for instance, people fight for how they do the course in the kitchen, how, who and when people do the washing up of the dishes and everything, and how, for instance, big debates like arenas like the equalitarian distribution of responsibilities in the construction of society. You can find that in a kitchen, in a shared home, in a very concrete way, by people discussing. If you left not you, left the dishes, dirty, and I had to do them. Because I don't like the kitchen to be like a big place. These kind of discussions are very interesting for me because they bring big politics into daily life, and you can very
easily. That's the next question. For you, politics and architecture, the same thing.
I find that architecture provides opportunities to deal with politics in a very, let's say, daily life level on the one hand, and on the other hand, in a very material way. So we could see that design, in a way, is creating another kind of politics. And politics not understood like Berlusconi against Monti, or the left or the right. It's more complex. What the politics that I'm saying now, daily life politics, in which we get to discuss how a situation is constructed and how the difference gets managed, so it could be preserved without a violent horizon. So here we see that there are many different things going on in this room. The way they could be preserved, kind of politics that I'm talking about. They are politics of aesthetics, of technologies, of access, of closing doors, of opening doors. But I will give you a very basic example. Switchers. I designed a residence for elder people, and I remember before I designed it, I went to see many other places for elder people, like residences for elder people, and some of the directors of these places told me not to leave a switch, light switch or whatever, switch, at the, in a way that anyone could touch it, because that would, the big sentence was, that would open the debate, and that's something you don't want to happen. Actually, I would like it to happen, so that's the big difference. He was kind of preventing architecture from becoming a political, let's say, compulsory pass point, but I want architecture, in a way, if I can, to be a compulsory pass point in which daily life could let people to discuss what they like and what they don't like. That's why I like remote controls, because I remember in every domestic situation in which I've been close to remote control, everybody starts to fight. But it's a very interesting fight because it's like, I want to put the football, the soccer match. No, I want to put the, I don't know, the sound of music, playing it, you know. And then by defending whether the soccer match, the Champions League match, is better to be seen than sound of music of these pink discussions like whether I don't know, Berthod and Monaco is gay or not, you know, and this kind of very important discussions. There's an opportunity for people taking place in this situation to emerge as citizens by means of an opinion that they get to discuss with others. For me, remote control is a very interesting architectural device. So it makes daily life kind of politically activated. But the way I understand politics is not the communist, the right, the left. It's more daily life politics in which difference get together in, let's say, in a place where difference is preserved, or you know.
That's present. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about Swiss or the Swiss method of doing architecture? We started before.
Yeah, well, I don't know that much, but what I know is that, for instance, in Mendrisio, people is very passionate about architecture, and that's something very important for me. Chantal Mouffe, for instance, is now speaking a lot about passion. How things could only happen when people are affected by them. You know, if you don't care about things, politics are not possible. You don't get to discuss things that you don't care about. Or the discussion is not a real one. You know, if you don't really want to see TV, you don't discuss what program should be on. You know, and what I've seen is that many people from Mendrisio is been in the office. You know, you've been in it. And what I remember is very interesting conversations about materials, about the place of architects in society, about whether pop aesthetics that I very much like are the best ones.
You asked before, why this I find really interesting, this discussion, because you asked me why there is not...
Yeah, in some of the works they are not referenced to pop culture.
Pop culture in the school, yes. Only is about poetical reference.
Or geographical ones rather than pop ones. When I mean pops, it's roads in a way, and cables and trash and McDonald's or wonderful tiny restaurants. Yeah. But it's very important for me because that's something I find landscape a social construction, and for me it's very important to work with those materials because in them I see represented many interests, many sensitivities, many discussions that for me are very important. Imagine if you take an Almodovar movie and you remove the colors, you remove the funny posters, you remove the singing or the pop music, and you remove the suspenders with the mochas. You know, you would erase most of the life of the people that are taking part in those situations. So for me it's very important, those languages. So yeah, maybe I would miss them if I were here in the future, but I'm sure that I could discuss those things with all the teachers and all the students, and the situation would be very stimulating and very good for everyone, because I've discussed that with you many times and with you and with many other people. Yeah.
But it's also the Switzerland difference another. It is Switzerland another place compared to Spain, or compared to the place where you were, the create a different kind of architecture? What affects? What does it affect?
That's a very interesting question.
What the things you do?
To be honest, I don't find myself that competent to answer your question. I've never worked, I've never developed a project in Switzerland, but well, I can tell you something. I was telling you before that I was at the moment I was close to Eduardo Chiquita, and I was very touched by his research on void and material and speed in matter, air, and all these things that he was working with. So I was invited by him to spend a weekend with him and his family, and that was a very interesting story, because in a way it was good for me to see that he refused to talk about, let's say, daily, basic and ordinary things. He had to find a poetical dimension for everything. So he saw himself as a person that had to speak with very poetical reflections, and he wanted himself to be related to daily life in a metaphysical way. I would ask him how much he paid for his Mercedes-Benz, and he would feel very uncomfortable. He would prefer to talk about how moving landscape was very important, and to hear the, So in a way, what I would recall from those days was not only the void and the poetical vision of space and matter, not only my vision of ordinary preoccupations, but the confrontation of the two of them. For me, the interesting thing was the uncomfortable situation of him being asked of how much he paid for his car, and in a way the uncomfortable situation of myself not being answered. Yeah, so I would preserve that conflict. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the last question, I will pass to the more abstract one. What are for you the media? How do you use them as a tool to show to communicate your work?
Yeah. For me, it's very interesting the move or the shift we are experimenting from, let's say, a hegemony of mass media to that of, let's say, this worldwide lab or this network, more grassroots of internet, for instance, and many other things, because it's creating great opportunities to see yourself not only as receiving information, but receiving, confronting, editing, spreading up information, and creating a collective discourse by discussing with many others and being placed in all their roles at the same time. Whereas by watching TV, you could react to it, but in a very, let's say, asymmetrical way. You're basically getting contents and discussing them with your friends and with your neighbors. This transformation is very important for architecture, because it's bringing great opportunities to rethink the role architects could play in a society that is playing at the same time each individual many roles, and in which particularities and, let's say, marginal sensitivities could then be injected to the construction of the collective. So I have a friend who's very much interested on dyeing hair, and he was kind of a weird guy when I was in school, because he was interested on that, but no one else was interested, so he didn't have anyone to. There's a guy, Roberto Montale. He's very important in my office. He's an architect working in my office for a long time now, and he's doing amazing jobs in the office, amazing work. He's very much interested on moustache, and he's got a blog on moustache. And he's got so many friends all around the world discussing on moustache, whether the moustache is better, the Fabata moustache is more elegant than the Errol Flynn one, or that is what will happen when moustache runs out of fashion again. What will they do? Because now they are enjoying a very particular situation in which those that love moustache are fashionable. But what happens when they go back out of fashion? Will they feel, because what is better, not to have been in fashion or having been in fashion and having lost that? That's a big discussion. I'm not very interested in that, but he's got a whole community discussing about that every day, and I get mad in the office because he's got his telephone sounding all day long like another post about whether it's better not to have mustache or having it, or dye your mustache or change it, or what is interesting for me is that by this very particular sensitivity, he gets connected to others. And imagine if he was living in a country, in a tiny village in the 17th century, he would be the weird guy that goes on talking about mustache all day long, But here he's creating like a leader of a whole community. That's very challenging for the notion of urbanism for us. And I'm trying to develop projects, now talking seriously. Well, that was serious for me, but for other people, also serious. It makes me easy to identify that shared homes is a very Erasmus shared homes is a very important urbanism, and it's making a whole new way of using the land, territory, cities, houses, and that's a whole urbanism that, in my opinion, could be seen as like the capital of the European Union united in diversity. And those identifications make it possible for us to design then things like Moose City, or like the rolling house for the rolling society, or many other architectural devices that are learning, identifying the complexity of those constructions of the internet age.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so
Start with the...
and now we pass to the identity.
Okay, and you want like 1 word, 2 words answer?
Yes, we would prefer to be short questions, but if you feel that you want to say more about the particular question, feel free.
I try to do it fast.
But feel free to do it. Don't.
Okay.
So, is there a particular place that you would like to live in?
Yes. I'd like to live in a lavanderia. Lovely place. I really love them. Yeah, if I could, but they're very comfortable. And you get everything: conversation, new friends every day, clean clothes, and food. Now you can get a pizza there. They're very comfortable to sleep. Yes. I don't know. I wouldn't be there more than 2 hours, but if I could, I'd love to.
Do you have any book that you would like to suggest to us?
Wow, there's many. One book. Talking about lobster, I think it's the English, by David Foster Wallace. I really love David Foster Wallace.
Do you have a favorite color?
Yeah, pink.
Pink, okay. Which is the first architect that comes to your mind in this moment?
Callicrates. Guido.
Which is your most frequent error? Which is your most frequent mistake?
Speak too fast, I think.
Okay. Do you listen to music when you are designing, when you're making architecture?
Yeah.
And can you suggest an album for us?
A whole album. Can I suggest a song?
Yeah, of course.
Muy delicado, delicadísimo. Yeah, it's a Colombian song. I really like it. It's muy delicado, delicadísimo. It's so bad that it makes it very easy for people to laugh about it. Yeah, so it creates very good situation.
Do you have an obsession?
Yes, many. Yeah.
Okay.
Do Do you want me to tell you which one?
As you wish.
I want to see things finished when I think about them. Yeah, it's a big winner, you know. I think about something, then I want to see it. So I'm very impatient. Yeah, I'm not patient at all. Yeah. So that becomes an obsession. Is it finished? Yeah.
Do you believe in architecture without architects?
Yes, definitely. I mean, no. No, I do believe that people do things that we consider that belong to the architect's world all the time. So I think that we could recognize that at certain moment everyone acts like an architect. Yeah. And not only humans, but dynamics create architectures, and we have to recognize them.
Do you prefer theory or practice?
I think they are part of the same. I don't think there's a possibility of practicing without criticizing, thinking, fixing ideas, creating languages, creating evaluations of things. And at the same time, I don't think there's a critical work that is not proposing things, experimenting, designs. So I see those two things as dependent ones from each other. So in my work, they come as part of the same thing.
Family or career?
Family or
Career.
Wow, I hope both. Yeah, both and interconnected.
Heidegger or Mick Jagger?
Both. But I would prefer Mick Jagger for Saturday night. I don't want Heidegger speaking to me in a bar. Yeah. Hey, maybe he was a nice guy and a fun guy. Yeah, to hang out. Yeah, with.
A car or a bicycle?
Both, I would say, but for Sunday morning, Sunday morning. Well, also a convertible one. Both, yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you want to realize that you haven't been able to?
Yes, many things.
One that
You mean as an architect?
or as a man, something that comes to your mind.
There are many situations I would like to work with. I'd love to work, for instance, with designing and constructing and intervening in educational processes like schools or high schools or universities. I'd love to design something that somehow be part of that context. I've tried, I've done many competitions, but I never win, so here I am. Not having done it yet.
Okay, Andrés, thank you very much for this interview.
Okay, thank you to you also.